Kawhi Paul George era? You want
Yeah,
to go through the timeline?
let's go through the timeline. So they signed with them, right? And that's the pandemic year, right? I'm
Yeah,
asking for confirmation. I'm yeah.
Kawhi gets the confirmation PG's being traded there in 2020, 19, 2020. They won the most games of the 10 year with Doc Rivers.
Yep. And then the pandemic happens, right? Okay. I'm asking for I want a conversation with you guys, so bear with me here because my memory doesn't work as well remembering all these things. So the pandemic year happens, then they get the break off, and then we remember if we remember correctly, the Clippers were one of the teams that did not want to be in the bubble. I think they made that pretty abundantly clear. I mean, Paul George was talking about it after games where he was dealing with deep mental issues, being away from his family and being secluded and stuff. It just wasn't working. Um, and they get bounced in the
Second round,
second round.
they were playing around with their food versus the Mavericks. Kristaps Porzingis has his torn meniscus. I think it was torn meniscus.
Yes.
And then they play the Denver Nuggets in the first round. They go up 3-1. Keep in mind, Montrezl Harrell had to leave the bubble because his grandmother had passed away,
Yes.
and he had come back, wasn't in the right conditioning shape. And when
Mm.
he did return, Jokic and Jamal Murray offensively did their thing, and the Clippers blew a 3-1 lead.
That was in the second round, though, right? So they played the Mavericks in the first round. Um, okay. Yep. You're starting to jog my memory a little bit because I'm remembering that. So they get bounced there. Then we move into next season. And this is the season where Kawhi gets injured in the playoffs, right?
Wait, this is the
Yeah.
season where Doc Rivers is
Gets
fired
fired. Yep.
and
Time.
Tyronn Lue comes in as the assistant coach. The Clippers go from 49 to 47 wins. This is the year they bring in Nick Batum. He starts to play well. He comes in as a starter. The Mavericks get the fourth seed. Was this the year they tanked to play the? It was the year where they tanked to play the Mavericks in the first round of the playoffs. Fun fact: Daniel Turo, Clippers legend, helped them get that matchup,
Mhm.
and the Mavericks take them to 7 games in the
Yep.
first round.
And then yep, I'm remembering that series too. And then they play the Jazz in the second round, if I'm not mistaken,
Yep,
right? And then which game was it that Kawhi went down? Was that
game four.
four? Were the Clippers up in that game, John? Do you remember at the time that he went down, or
I'm not. I don't know,
yeah, I don't remember. I forget
but it
which.
was 2-1.
Okay, I feel like it was late in that game too. Yeah, so we all know the injury. Kawhi's driving down the court. It's 1-on-1, and just unfortunate events. The I think Ingles' knee bumps into Kawhi's thigh, and wow, torn ACL was it? I forgot the exact injury.
Partially torn ACL. Yeah.
Partially torn ACL. Just a freak out like that. It's the same thing with the Zaza thing. You can't so he's out, and we know how Kawhi is with his body. He's not going to play unless he feels he's 100%. And you cannot fault a guy for that. If he's telling you, I'm not feeling good, why do you want him to go out there and compromise his body? You don't. So Clippers fans, I there was this one guy. Oh my god, he pissed me off, dude. It he was like, Kawhi is the main issue. The only people I want back on the Clippers team next year is Westbrook and Paul George. Get Kawhi off the team.
That's probably satire.
It was not satire, trust me. He was pretty serious. But I just again, so he goes down. They blow that series, right, John? They lose to the Utah Jazz.
No, the Jazz are the one that blows the lead. They go on to play the Suns in the
Mhm.
conference finals. The Suns get up ahead early. The Valley Oop in game one or two. I think it was game one. The Clippers go on to take it to 6 games without Kawhi Leonard, but inevitably fall short, as we all expect.
Yes. Okay. You're jogging my memory again. All right. So that was when I was like, yeah, dude, if Kawhi was here, I believe that they would have went to the finals that year. But then he misses the whole season. Right. So that's
The Clippers
2020,
win 42 games. They squeak
2022.
into the playoffs without him, without their first round pick, which is owed to the Oklahoma City Thunder. Kind of a very, very long list of draft picks they get for Paul George, and they don't make the playoffs because Paul George gets COVID in the playing game, and the Pelicans get in.
And then we get to this season. Again, when Kawhi's been on the court I mean, you can look at the stats since December. His numbers in each month are elite numbers. I mean, he's putting up Kawhi Leonard numbers. So again, I just don't. I get it and I understand the Kawhi blame because of the injury, but if that's your blame and that's why you want the guy off your team and you think that he's the full culprit of this, I just don't think you're seeing it. I don't think this team was. I love the team building around. Listen, filling your team with a bunch of 3-and-D guys. I do believe that that is a recipe for success in the NBA. I
Yep.
do. The one ingredient they were freaking missing was an important ingredient to this dish. A freaking point guard. They didn't have a point guard to set anybody up. So that was the problem. They were missing the one ingredient they needed. They had the superstar, they had the star, they had the 3-and-D guys, they had Zubac down low. They just needed a freaking point guard. And they could never get that done. So this it's fallen short. I don't know what's going to happen in the offseason. I don't know if they continue this. Maybe they do, because I don't know if Steve Ballmer sees another way of building just as good of a team. I mean, you trade Paul George, what are you going to really get from him? I don't know what the value is. I don't even know what the value is for Kawhi out there. I know if I'm the Miami Heat, I would love to have Kawhi on my team. I don't give a crap.
Nowhere.
But yeah, yeah, I don't know what happens this offseason. I don't. Listen, Paul George comes back, they can win a series, but I don't. There's not much faith in there, man.
This is a good team, but a very underperforming one.
Yeah.
I think what it looks like their first round matchup right now is with the Suns, and you might be taking advantage of that because there is no KD possibly for that first round. But your first round matchup could be the Suns or just as easy the Golden State Warriors, and you don't want to run into either one of them. That's probably the worst case scenario for them. Going up, you could choose either the defending champs or the team that represented the West in the finals the year before that. So Clippers really got their hands full, and if PG isn't available for that first round, it very well just might be a first round exit for the Clippers this year.
And they got a pretty tough schedule to end the season. They play the Thunder, who they just lost to. Pelicans, I mean, that's kind of a reprieve, but without Paul George, it's not a guaranteed. They got the Bulls. I think that they should be able to beat the Bulls. Then they play the Grizzlies back-to-back in Memphis. Then in April, they play the Pelicans. Then they play the Lakers, Trailblazers, and then the Suns to end the season.
Now, the one year they did have a point guard was the year Reggie Jackson took over in 2021. They went to the conference finals.
Yeah, and he's not what you would describe as a true point guard. You know what I mean? He's more of a score first guy.
He's
But I get what you're saying. Yeah,
And that was the thing. He enabled them to go 5-on-out with Russ. Russ has been a massive positive when he's playing with Kawhi and Paul George, but he can't go 5-out. And we know there's some limitations with him. We don't have to get into it. The Clippers' issue is they didn't have a point guard, and also they let their window slip. Marcus Morris is cooked. I think he's 34 years old. He's done. Nick Batum is not the same defensive player he was. Terrence Mann got ejected in the last game versus the Thunder. That was a pain because he's the one guy that actually can defend the perimeter. Robert Covington's halfway cooked. Mason Plumlee's cooked defensively. This is a team that can't defend. And part of what we talked about before, 3-and-D wins, they got to be able to defend. And these guys, half of them can't. So that's the first problem. The second issue is they can't play the way they did 2 years ago. The Clippers can't go small because they don't have the shooting. They don't have Reggie Jackson. They have Russell Westbrook and Bones Highland. And I mean, earlier in the season, the bigger issue was John Wall. John Wall's out the league. Russell Westbrook's a lot better than him in at least this stage of their careers. And then you talk about if it's Zubac, who's missed some time, he's probably their third best player. And when you don't have him, this defense is terrible. It's awful because you don't have rim protection. You also don't have perimeter defense. And I don't think Mason Plumlee was really a solution for that. Paul just, post up in the lane, block a Paul George drive. He won't space the floor. He'll get cooked on defense. If you couldn't tell by now in this podcast, I hate Mason Plumlee. I hate watching him play. And the fact that he's on this team, Russell Westbrook, just makes him a lot more frustrating to watch.
yeah. I mean, it's I lost for words with this Clippers team. I just how much hype was going into the Clippers Lakers rivalry that was going to be for the supposed to be for the last couple of years, and it's fallen apart on both sides. When the Clippers made it to the conference finals, where were the Lakers? When the Lakers made it to the finals, where were the Clippers? And in the last 2 years, both teams have kind of been,
So
Uh, what?
let
Go
me
ahead.
make it a little bit more portable. Paul George has 2 more years left in his contract, a player option in 25. Kawhi also does, same player option. The Los Angeles Clippers, are they a failed super team, or is this never a super team from the start?
Never a super team. No, it was a dynamic duo.
A failed dynamic duo.
Yeah, yeah, it is, and it disappointing as hell. I wish I had a crystal ball. I could tell you what's going to happen in the off season. I have no idea. I know Steve Ballmer is a guy who likes to spend, but I don't know what's out there for him to switch up on this team. Got to be honest with you.
Yeah, he likes to win. It's tough to if you're opting to get rid of one of either Kawhi or Paul George. I don't know how you progress from that. It seems like you get rid of one, you're gonna regress.
You never get equal or better value.
Yeah.
Better value when you're trading guys on Paul George and Kawhi Leonard's level. I mean, we saw that with Kevin Durant.
Yeah.
And we love Mikal Bridges. He's doing great right now, but still he's not Kevin Durant, guys. So
So let me ask you guys another question. Waving the white flag, are we officially out on the Clippers given Paul George's recent injury?
as a championship team,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm waving it.
yeah, I'll say they've got a puncher's chance, but that's all I'll give them.
I waved it a month ago. They haven't looked like a contender all year, and the worst part about it is health. Paul George, I respect the guy, and the fact he's come back from that leg injury in 2014 is nothing short of remarkable. But I think that was the last signal that this was a failed era, a failed opportunity for the Clippers that, guys, the Clippers, they're missing half of their first-round picks the next couple of years. Oh, to the Oklahoma City Thunder. They're going to give up pick swaps. The Thunder are already a better team than the Los Angeles Clippers. 4 years after they swapped a young star in Shea for a proven star in Paul George. I think the Paul George trade could go down as one of the worst in NBA history. You gave up a player in Shea who could be better than PG. He could be a top 10 player as soon as this season or next season if they make the playoffs. But you also gave up half a dozen first-round picks, a handful of pick swaps, and most importantly, you tried to win a championship. That's why you moved off of Blake Griffin and Chris Paul. You wanted to finally transition to a new era. And that era, the Clippers only got to the conference finals. They never even made it to the NBA finals. With 5, this is now year 4. Next year will be year 5. And we're already questioning should they move Paul George and Kawhi to get the most assets because this has hit its peak. And there's really no opportunity, it seems like, given their health issues, that they can actually climb over that hump.
You're right.
Yep.
The only thing they can hope for is, next year they make some good moves and get a little younger, and maybe actually get a freaking point guard. Then maybe a lot more Clippers fans will be happier. Kawhi will be a year off the injury. You saw him play a lot better. Paul George, you'd hope be healthier. There is a bright light at the end of the tunnel, possibly, but it is shutting fast. I'm not going to lie to you guys, but there is a light at the tunnel if the Clippers make the right moves in the offseason and they can keep the two big guys on this team. It's going to take a lot of work. It is.
So KD's Nets or Kawhi's Clippers, what team was the bigger failure?
The Nets easily.
Nets.
Easily.
Yeah.
That was probably the greatest
what was their success? I mean, what was their? I mean, at least Kawhi and Paul George made it to the second round consistently.
Yeah.
They made the second round twice. Twice, and they made the conference finals. KD's made it to the conference finals
and got swept.
I think that speaks for itself.
KD would have went to the conference finals.
We don't do the would-haves. Yeah, and the Clippers would have went to the finals if Kawhi doesn't go down. We can see
how
we
went to a Game 7 in the second round. That's the Nets' peak.
I mean, we go tit for tat. That was the bigger failure, especially when they traded for Harden, because we all saw that as the big three, the super team. People were saying it was better than the Golden State Warriors, big three. Mm. So that's the bigger failure, in my opinion.
I guess
I really, John, I'll be honest with you. I really don't think there's an argument.
No, I don't know how you.
I really don't think there's an argument. I mean, when we compare some of the greatest teams ever assembled, there's not, at least with the three-headed monster that was KD, Kyrie, and James Harden, it does not match up. This is a duo. This is something that we want to see out of the NBA. More duos. more stars in pairs, but that trio was expected to win not one, not two, but at least show their face in an NBA Finals, and they didn't do that.
The Nets had a lot more expectations with probably the most skilled trio we've ever seen, and that includes the Warriors and KD. But the reason I asked that question is because the Clippers, for all those years, it felt like to me had more opportunities than the Nets. The Nets had a lot of terrible injuries, whereas the Clippers, their first year together, they blew a 3-1 lead. And that to me was their opportunity to play the Lakers, and they squandered that because they couldn't win one game.
Yeah, but
Now the
yeah,
Nets
but
got
John,
swept, but that was missing all of their forwards minus KD,
see
and that
again,
was the closest sweep ever. One of the closest.
see how you bring up the context for the Nets one, but you don't bring up the context for the Clippers. We just told you that was the pandemic year. Nobody could have expected that happening, and none of the Clippers players wanted to be there. And Paul George was dealing with a lot of mental health and dark times.
I get it, but they want to be there enough to get up 3-1. They're good in those first 4 games.
That should show you how much talent that team had. They didn't want to be there, and they were still up 3-1. I just listen. If that's the one you're going to hold against, but you'll make these excuses for that 4-0 sweep. That's the closest sweep in NBA history. The fuck closest sweep in it. You got swept. You got
That could have been
swept.
a 6 game.
Could have
That was
been
a 6.
again with this couldas. You love that word, don't you? Coulda, woulda, shoulda. You love the ifs, the couldas, the shouldas, and the wouldas. They didn't. That's all. And neither did the Clippers. But at least the Clippers made it to the playoffs 3 times, got to the second round twice, got to the conference finals. The Nets, what they do? They got to the conference finals, and they got swept in the first round.
And
then
the second round,
and then they
swept. That was it. That was it.
What do you mean?
The furthest one was the second round, and then they got swept. And that was the only 2 playoff years they had because Kyrie requested the trade in the 4th. And the
I
first
understand that, John, but you asked which one's the biggest failure, so we can't say they only had that many opportunities. But the Clippers only had that many.
The Nets one was incomplete because Kyrie requested a trade in the middle of it.
No, that's
why tore his ACL in the middle of it, man. You forget that happened too. Like what they fired their head coach too. Like, what do you mean? Like, you're only bringing up the Nets things, but you're leaving out all the Clippers things that happened and just saying they had one more opportunity than the Nets in the playoffs, one more. And they did more in their playoff runs than the Nets did. I feel like this is right in front of you in your eyes, fact statements I'm making right now that
I'm not dying on a hill here. I feel like
you're dying.
John, they're both failures, but if we're gonna measure the failure, yeah, Brooklyn is way worse.
Way worse.
Way worse. And I think that's the worst setup in NBA history. Forget just comparing them to the Clippers. That's the worst project in NBA history. That is worse than Kobe, Nash, and Dwight.
Oh, was it worse? Was the Nets' big 3 a bigger failure than the Lakers?
Yes, because those guys, I think some people knew those guys were cooked.
Nash was past his prime. Kobe's getting up there in age, even though Kobe's still Kobe. Dwight and the Lakers didn't really work out.
Now, once you saw them together, once you saw it, I think you kind of realized, like, oh, this is not going to work. And then the reports started coming out with Kobe not being a big fan of Dwight's work ethic and whatnot. You saw Nash was basically done. This one, James Harden was coming off of how many seasons averaging 30, 35 points.
He was an MVP candidate.
Exactly. Kyrie Irving still box office superstar. KD, yes, he was coming off a torn Achilles, but we all said, if one guy is going to be able to come back from that, it's KD because his style of play is not an explosive driving to the hoop.
It's graceful. Yeah.
Sniper. He's a sniper. He's just a sniper.
We know he's a sniper. The reason why I come away with that perspective, I'm not trying to be different. I just feel like the Nets, they were contenders this year and they had a chance. The one normal year the Nets had, Kyrie requested a trade. And so to me, there's a little bit of what could have happened. What if he didn't? Could the Nets have made it to the conference finals the way the Clippers did? And maybe with their offensive firepower and their defense, could have went to the finals this year in the East that still feels up in the air. It feels undecided between the Bucks, the Celtics, and the Sixers. So to me, and the Knicks, sure, Justin, I just feel like the Nets, their best year was the one where we didn't get to see what would have happened, the end results.
That's exactly what makes it as big of a failure as it is.
So are the Clippers going to sprint us and make it to the finals now?
No, no. I give the Warriors a better chance than them.
Yeah, come on.
No, exactly, and they might be matched up with them in the first round. So
One last thing I want to say about Paul George. Uh,
by the way, Kings will knock out the Clippers if that's a matchup as well.
Probably. I think they would win. The fact that Paul George came off a compound leg fracture and got better, and we don't talk about that as NBA fans, we don't even recognize that. It goes to show the type of player he is, and really, probably one of the most. That was the most gruesome injury I've ever seen in my life, and my best friend broke his leg back-to-back years playing basketball, and I still have vivid memories of what that felt like. And 6, 7 years later, I don't feel like I'll forget that for a long time. So with Paul George, I really do appreciate. I may make fun of him for not getting to the rim and stuff like that, not make fun of him, but I'm going to criticize some athletes sometimes. And I don't feel like we give Paul George enough love for the fact he came off that injury and has gotten to this level. Before he had that leg hyperextension, he had a sick 360 dunk. And it's like he's been so great, we forget all that he's had to overcome. And that to me is really a testament of how special a player he is.
And he is, but that's a reason why we don't disrespect PG's game. I think PG's game, even though he doesn't drive to the basket, like you said, nearly as much as he used to, what partially made him so special was his ability to get to the basket and shoot the ball. Um, but yeah, he gets nothing but respect from all of us. I think any one of our teams would be glad to have him there. I mean, I'll take him. I'm sure Brandon will take him in Miami. You wouldn't?
No.
Oh wow.
I love Paul George. I don't we don't need a Robin right now. I mean, Jimmy Butler is that guy, but again, I just
Wow.
I don't like that Paul George again, and I told you this, guys, that he came out literally recently and said, I am a number two.
Yeah, I agree.
Like, I just don't like you saying that in the public. You want to say that in your head. You want the conversation behind the doors. That's fine, but just don't say and I get it, self-awareness and stuff, but it's just for me. I don't like that, man. I don't. You
I
wouldn't,
mean,
you wouldn't hear
I love
Scottie
the
Pippen.
self-awareness. I get that.
Yeah, you wouldn't hear Scottie Pippen caught dead saying that, man. You wouldn't hear Dwayne Wade caught dead saying that. I know Dwayne Wade took the step back for LeBron, but come on.
Dwayne Wade had one of the biggest rampages we've seen on the road to a championship.
Yeah. Love Paul George, though. He's not what we need in Miami right now. That's the only reason I'd say I wouldn't want him.